What a day as the Commanders have made a monster trade. They made a couple of moves in free agency earlier. Really, they started it last week. Bobby Wagner. They re-signed Zach Ertz this weekend. They re-signed John Bates late last night. Woke up to that news this morning. And then they opened free agency, signing Javon Kinlaw. Oh, by the way, Tress Way also back. Praise be. Javon Kinlaw, 3 years, $45 million, $30 guaranteed. We'll get into him as we go. I've watched a little bit of his tape. Very interesting player, especially for the deal. A guy that Adam Peters is very familiar with. A guy, by the way, I think it's worth mentioning purely on a character standpoint. Robert Saleh, after having him in San Francisco, brought him to New York, and now Adam Peters has been like, I want you with me in Washington. So this is a guy that's very well liked. As a player, I think the idea of Javon Kinlaw has always been a little bit better than the reality of Javon Kinlaw. But Dan Quinn is also very smart and is very good at using guys in specific roles. So I definitely have some ideas. It's definitely some ideas there on Kinlaw, but we'll get into it as we go. All right, let's get your thoughts, though, on the Laremy Tunsil trade. If you are just tuning in, the Commanders have traded a package of 4 draft picks, a third this year, a second next year, the highest amongst them, for Laremy Tunsil, Texans left tackle. He is also coming back with a 4th-round selection in this year's draft. Marcus, let's get us started. Marcus, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Hoffy? How we feeling today?
Feeling good, man. Feeling good. Feeling energized. Like, this is nuts. This is fun. This is why radio is still king, Marcus. We're live.
I love it, man. Let AP cook. Oh, my goodness. Like, quality over quantity, man. Like, it's like walking on eggshells dealing with AP, but you know when he strikes, it's going to hit hard, man. It's going to hit hard. I will compare this trade very, very loosely to the Deebo Samuels trade in this regard. Getting a Laremy Tunsil makes your entire offensive line better. Like, it makes the group better. You have guys that are already good, but they may be better at other positions, but you won't know unless you get a guy that's really great at his position, and then you can start moving things around. Like, this is he like frustrates me. AP frustrates me because he's like a methodical genius. Like, I love what he's doing. I just hate the fact that we have to wait, but I buckle up, man. This week's going to be crazy. I feel like this week is going to be crazy. That's why I'm not really that concerned about what we're doing with Jeremy Chin. Like, sad to see him go, but AP's cooking up something. I don't know what it is yet, and I hate having to wait for it, but I need my entree, AP. I need you to get on that. But, look, man, I'm excited for it.
I mean, Marcus, I don't know how much bigger of an entree you're going to get than Laremy Tunsil, who's one of the best 5 tackles in football. Like, that's – your entree is Laremy Tunsil. I think the hard thing is, like, we just don't know how it's going to play out in the long term, which we didn't know last year. I think last year a lot of people were like, I hate these moves. And then they wound up going to the NFC Championship game, and we now have, like,
everybody loves them.
Right. And it's like we can laugh at Shane and Oxon Hill in that call forever, right? It's like, this guy sucks, this guy sucks, this guy's like, well, they went to the NFC Championship game, so who sucks after all? This year,
I feel like, man, and it's like,
this year it's just different. It's like, okay, now it's a bunch of names that we know. They're doing big swings, and now we're like, we think this is good, but, like, we don't know. And that's every team in the NFL, by the way.
It is, but it's like you can only trust. You really can only trust him at this point. Like, you saw what he did last year, and you see that he's making moves that aren't just like random swings. Like, we needed an upgrade at left tackle. We have a potential franchise, well, not a potential, he's a franchise player in Houston, and now we have him here. So it's like he's making the moves that make sense. It's like quality moves. That's why I'm excited, man. I don't know what he's got cooking next, but I'm hungry. I'm hungry for more. I love it.
Marcus, thanks for the call, dude. Always appreciate it. Let's go to Gary from Upper Marlboro. Gary, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show, sir.
Hey, Craig. Anytime you can make a move to get a top 3 or 4 player at his position, I think you have to be excited about it. He definitely improves your team. The only concern that I have is, why would Houston give this guy up when they have a similar situation with a young quarterback that was coming off a great rookie year that exceeded all expectations? Why would you give up a guy? I don't know if they have salary cap problems, but it always shakes my confidence. You know, back when we got Donovan McNabb. Why would Philadelphia give up Donovan McNabb? Now, he wasn't at the level that Laremy Tunsil is right now. But you always wonder why teams trade a relatively young superstar for any reason. So I'm anxious to hear why they did that. But he definitely upgrades the team. And Philadelphia has been weakened this year today. I think Washington upgraded them. So I don't know. I'm not so big on the defensive tackle. But I am, you can't be anything but excited about getting a left tackle of the quality of Laremy Tunsil. I mean, I don't know what happened last year. I didn't follow Houston, but like you said, the year before, I mean, this guy was lights out and everybody knew it. So only question I have is, why did they give him up? They did give up potentially 3 starters with a second, third, and a fourth round pick. But I think you play this year by year with Jayden until you get to the point where you're going to have to pay him. And he's definitely an upgrade, no question about it. So, and you got to trust Adam in free agency and these types of things. He can spot talent that has been on the field. Again, I still question his drafting a little bit, but Laremy Tunsil definitely upgrades and he improves the team. So I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for the call. And I think that's a totally fair question. And I actually think that the last part that what Gary said is going to help determine the success here. One of the things I've been thinking about the Commanders and building forward for this year is, let's say they want to play a little more coverage at times. Like, what's the role Dominique Hampton plays in that? Like, Dominique Hampton, why do I remember that name? Remember they drafted him last year and then basically gave him a redshirt year as they converted him from safety to linebacker. And so they bring back Luvu, obviously, because he was on a multi-year deal. They bring back Bobby, who is Bobby freaking Wagner, but has some limitations in coverage. Are there packages where maybe Dominique Hampton's out there, probably with Bobby? Like, he's not a Mike linebacker, but if he's playing off-ball linebacker in certain passing situations where maybe Luvu's playing end and he's like true defensive end, and then Dominique Hampton is playing behind him as a linebacker and like kind of a hybrid role. If they hadn't spent the season converting him, then maybe I'd be like, he's your Jeremy, or in the mix to replace Jeremy Chin. That would feel a little aggressive in year 2 for a guy that didn't play and they just switched his position, so he's not a safety anymore. But like, those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about for some of these draft picks that didn't pan out last year. In year 1, to say like, okay, later round picks, and frankly, even a guy like Ben Sinnott. Like, if Sinnott works out in the long term, it's fine. And obviously, the 2024 draft is going to be a home run forever, no matter what, because Jayden is Jayden. But I do think that like some of these late round picks where Adam has been great in the past, he's shrunk his margin of error in the draft tremendously, because now you go from a bunch of lottery tickets to, hey man, we kind of got to win the lottery on a couple of these to fill out the roster. Because one thing that, while we talk about the rookie quarterback contract, eventually you do need other guys. Like 3-4 years down the line, you're going to need rookie guys. And maybe you just say, we'll deal with that problem then. But you don't want to have Jayden surrounded by nothing in a couple of years. Like, you need other young guys to grow with him. You want to be able to rebuild in 3 years from now when you have to pay Jayden by hopefully extending some of your guys early in the way that Philadelphia has. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. There is a fair amount of risk to this strategy, but the one thing I'll say about both the Tunsil trade and the Kinlaw move even is we can quibble about the price, and I think that's fair, and how you manage your assets is 100% part of being a general manager in football, but there's no doubt both guys make the football team better. And if you were in the NFC Championship game and you're able to honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, we're better than the team that was in the NFC Championship game last year, that means you're legitimately competing for the Super Bowl. And not just to be in it, but to win it. And at some point, that reality has to matter more than what happens 3 years from now. If you have a Lombardi trophy, well, you worry about that then with a big smile on your face going, hey, at least we got a Lombardi trophy. Let's get to the phones. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Let's start off with Jason. Jason, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Craig? I am liking this trade that we did for a tackle. And I like the Kinlaw move. And I always tell people, when it comes to cliches, the cliche that's in football that is, about the most accurate is if you dominate the line of scrimmage on each facet of the game, you got a greater chance to win. And that's where I feel like we got better at with these moves, and that's where we needed to go to get better at. And I wish people would just, listen to people who know more than them, like you guys, you and Logan and John Kime and Nikki Javala, because you guys know stuff and y'all listen to people that know more than y'all, and y'all report to us. And it was already kind of known that this class wasn't going to be a big-time free agent class, but I feel like people want to go big fish hunting, and there was no big fish to really hunt out there. So I like the approach. It feels like there's a plan going on, because that is a lot of picks to give up, but it feels like this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction, like the tackles, were being signed, and this happened. This feels like there's definitely a plan going on coming up with the draft. Feels like this is a trade-back situation where we can accumulate more picks to recoup what we kind of lost with the Laremy Tunsil trade. But, I'm feeling good. I feel like we're going in the right direction. I trust this front office. This is not like the old regime where they probably would have overspent on everybody and, not have any production for it. So I feel great about this and like the show and keep doing your thing. But we're in the right direction. This is good. This is good and methodical.
Thanks, Jason, for the call. And I do think that's an important point that Jason makes there, that, this is a work in progress. And ultimately, we're not going to judge how this all works out till years from now, unless they win a Super Bowl. And we're talking about the Super Bowl champion Washington Commanders in 2025, and we go into free agency 2026 being like, well, everything's justified. They won a championship. But ultimately, like years from now, we'll understand how this all worked out. But at the very least, if we're judging the offseason, we should at least wait to see what the big picture is. We should at least wait to see, like, okay, training camp is now around the corner. All the moves are done. They've moved the money around. They've done the drafting. They've traded back or not, because there are no guarantees. They might have the idea that, like, we want to trade back out of 29 and recoup some draft capital. That doesn't mean they're actually going to be able to. But they can't not make this move until draft day, then do it. It's too late. Laremy Tunsil there might have been other offers. And so I think you have to just kind of evaluate, like, obviously we're live. This is live radio, live YouTube streaming, live everything. That's how this works. We only have the information we have right now. But if we want to be smart about this, we at the very least have to say these are the possible options moving forward. And as much as I think it's simpler to be like, this good, this bad, sometimes this stuff is kind of in the gray. And, like, I'll admit, like, the Javon Kinlaw thing is risky. I don't love his tape watching the little bit that I watched. I know that there's some better tape out there. Apparently, he played really well the last 3 games last year, so I'm going to go try to watch some of that later. I also was watching him just against the run. He's better against the pass. But, the idea of Javon Kinlaw has always kind of been better than Javon Kinlaw. So you pay that guy $15 million? Well, okay, that sounds bad, but it's also $15 million now is like $11 million a couple of years ago. So $15 million for a rotational defensive tackle piece who's going to play 650 snaps for you. That's not a bad price in the modern market. So all in all, like, it's hard to make sense of all these things while the pieces are moving. We're doing the best we can. But the one thing I think you can definitively say for right now is the team better now than they were last week? Yeah. Getting Bobby back, getting Zach back, getting John Bates back as that blocking tight end, getting some of the pieces that they have now in, getting Debo. Like, they are better than they were last year, and there might be consequences in the long term, but that's where we just don't know what the long term is going to look like quite yet. Let's go to AP next. AP, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how you doing, Hoffman?
Good, man.
Hey, so I'm pretty impressed with the moves we made. As far as the Kinlaw trade, I feel like this is a Adams-Peters. I know, this is my guy. I know him. And, with Dan Quinn and company, hopefully they can get a lot more out of him type of situation. As far as the compensation, maybe it's one of those yesterday or today's price is or today's overpayment is tomorrow's bargain, hopefully.
Also true.
As far as Tunsil goes, like, this is definitely an investment in Jayden and protecting the investment. And hopefully we don't have to get a miraculous hero ball type of Jayden Daniels. Hopefully we can get a surgeon who's just sitting there comfortably having tea and carving up the defense. But that's my take. Sad to see Jeremy Chin go, but, you know, he did have his flaws as well. I mean, he did lay the lumber, but, you know, he did kind of lack a little bit in covering tight ends. But overall, hopefully we can replace him with an upgrade rather than a downgrade. That's all I got. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it, AP. Thanks for the call. I mean, again, there's a lot of moving pieces here in terms of what the Commanders are going to do moving forward at some other positions. Like, what happens if they sign Javon Holland? What happens if they do any number of other things at safety? What if they go draft the kid, Amanawari, out of South Carolina? Like, what does that look like? That dude's, you know, been compared to Jeremy Chin. Lance Zierlein has compared him to Jeremy Chin. So there's definitely a lot of intrigue in terms of where this Commanders team goes from here. This is clearly a team that is all in right now, trying to be as good as they possibly can be this year. And when you go to the NFC Championship game in year one and you have this quarterback on a rookie deal, there are definitely worse ideas than seeing how many different places you can get really good talents on your roster. And that is exactly what they're doing. And even in depth, like, is Javon Kinlaw a really good defensive tackle in the NFL? No. Is he a really good defensive tackle 3 in the NFL? Yes. Now, is it worth the price? What else can you do? The thing is, because the salary cap is what it is, we know that they can afford to do a little bit more than maybe we thought they could do coming in. I don't know how many financial choices they really have to make. And because the cap is probably going to continue to grow at an outrageous pace, then maybe a couple of years from now, and maybe even next year, right? Does the Javon Kinlaw, rotational defensive tackle cost you $18 million a year? Maybe, probably not, but it's certainly going to look like all these deals look less ridiculous as time goes on. Rarely do they truly blow up. And the thing is, let's say it's even really bad and he's terrible. Like, are you going to have to eat some dead money to cut him? Unquestionably. But is it going to be an amount that, like, makes you go from Super Bowl team to bottom dweller? No, absolutely not. Continue to take your calls. Also get in some analysis of some of the other moves that have gone on around the NFL, but just an enormous news day here in D.C. with the Commanders trading for left tackle Laremy Tunsil from the Houston Texans. Let's keep going with the calls. Let's go to Reggie. Reggie, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Craig? Love the show as always.
Appreciate it, man.
I'm not sure, man. I know you know. Once you make a list of left tackles, right, you're not going to go down the list too far before you get to Laremy Tunsil's name.
For sure.
That is a stud. Now you get to move Coleman, who played inside, I think at TCU, wherever he was at, guard, and I believe he right tackle. So when Cosme comes back, man, this makes your whole offensive line better. You know this. So, I mean, this is so far. And think about it. If Laremy Tunsil was, like, made available via trade, man, I'm quite sure, man, that he would have been highly sought after. Or if he was a free agent, he'd have been the number one free agent on the market. Maybe, probably quarterback, but he definitely would have been somebody who would have.
Oh, not in this quarterback class. Like, Laremy Tunsil would have been the belle of this ball.
Okay, well, there you go. So this is, man, I'm ecstatic. Now, the only thing I'm going to ask, because I don't know whether or not Tyler Owens, I could have sworn that, and I know we lost Chin, but I thought that the staff was kind of high on him. I'm assuming, again, I think now when you look at it, okay, we brought the tight ends back. We probably still can kind of use a burner at wide receiver, so maybe that's somebody you can get mid-round. But I think outside of running back, I need at least one game-changing running back. I think all of the attention now is going to go to the defense. I think this draft is going to be heavily defense. I don't know about you, I wasn't a fan of Josh Sweat because I didn't know whether or not he was a product of, you got Carter and you got Davis. Is he a product of that? And I see the Cardinals paid him a boatload of money. So I think we're going to go heavy in the draft. as far as our defense. But offensively, Craig, you as a fan, you can't help but to be over the moon when you get a top 5, 6 left tackle. I mean, we haven't had a left tackle like this since Trent. And,
For sure.
with all due respect to maybe everybody else that was afterwards. So I love what the Commanders are doing so far. I'm not sure we're going to make any other moves via free agent. I think we got a lot of people, though, that we could sign. I think we were 24 that was free agents or whatever. So it doesn't appear. I don't know as far as like our D-line. We lost a lot of people on the edges, so I'm not sure what we're going to do as far as edges is concerned. If they got some, I'm assuming multiple people that they got probably targeted in the draft. So I would like to see them, probably a more veteran safety. You mentioned Holland from Miami. So, okay, he may be because we lost 10. Fowler's not signed yet. So, again, we still got some holes that we need to fill in. We need another corner. So there's some pieces. But offensively, Craig, you can't be but ecstatic, man, as a fan offensively.
100%.
He did a hell of a job.
100%. And there's still some guys out there. I mean, like I haven't seen Darius Slayton sign. I haven't seen some of these other guys that are, on the lower end of the receiver market side. So, Reggie, thanks for the call. Tyler Owens is an interesting name. The staff was definitely high on him, but they're high on him for an undrafted free agent, right? That's very different than like, hey, this guy's a stud. He's a stud special teamer, but there's a very, very different ability to play special teams versus defense. Now, maybe I haven't seen Tyler Owens play defense since training camp last year, and the results were mixed. Like, he definitely made some plays, but he also at times was very confused on what he was supposed to do. And when you tell Tyler Owens run and hit, that's very different in rookie year one than telling Tyler Owens, hey man, here's your responsibility. You're reading this receiver. You're reading this route concept. You have to make sure you're watching the quarterback's eyes. And by the way, you have to communicate all this with there's a lot of stuff that is happening in the NFL in the back end at that safety spot. And so if all of a sudden during the season where he's not getting a ton of reps at safety, but if he's getting those reps and they're like, man, this guy is growing. He's a sponge. We think he can do it. Maybe they do run Tyler Owens out there opposite of Quan Martin next year. I just don't think that is probably their number one option. But it's also worth mentioning Spotrac currently has them still, and they've got the Laremy Tunsil contract on here at a $21.3 million cap hit. They have, do they have Kinlaw yet? I don't see the Kinlaw deal on here. In part because they don't know the structure yet. So they've got them right now at $62.3 million. They probably have around $50 million left, depending on what the Kinlaw number is in year one. That's still plenty of money that they can throw around. So whether it's a wide receiver 2, whether it is, and if Diami got 10, the older Darius Slayton, can you get him, 2 for 16, maybe 2 years, 16 million, 8 million a year? Like, that would be cool. I would love if they could do that kind of thing. In the edge market, there's a couple interesting guys like Malcolm Kuntz still hasn't signed. Like, there are guys out there that are available, not to mention what they potentially do in the draft. So there's still a long way to go. They need to both sign some top guys. They need to figure out their second corner spot, obviously, and some of those options are off the board. Carlton Davis, DJ Reed, etc. But there's still the Charvarius Ward option. There's still some other guys and money that Washington has to throw around. And that's before you even potentially restructure Terry / extend Terry. And then we'll see what they do with Tunsil's deal as well, whether they give him a new one now or do they deal with that maybe even in training camp after they get him in the building and make sure, or whatever the deal that is. Let's go to Terrell in Baltimore. Terrell, I always appreciate your calls, man. What you got for me today on this Tunsil trade?
Hey, man, Craig, listen, I think when I first when I first saw it, I wasn't sure what was happening. You said it was 4 picks, and I think when I read online it was 3. But if it was 4 picks, I think at the end of the day, people are kind of leery because.
Well, just to clean that up, it's a net 3 picks. They gave up 4 but got 1 back.
Right. Okay, so there you have it. So it's like I think a lot of fans just want to hear their team build the team through the draft and not give up a lot of draft capital, right? But, when you're thinking of that perennial left tackle that is going to make sure that Jayden is not running for his life, and that's literally his blind side that he doesn't have to worry about. I think Tunsil gave up, 9 sacks in, the past, I don't know how many years.
His pass blocking numbers are insane.
So it's like, yeah. So it's like you almost got to break the bank in a way, even if it's draft capital or money, for that type of guy and that long-term thing there. And then, like the previous caller said, what that does to the versatility of the O-line, moving Coleman to a different position, it just shores up that space. And, at the end of the day, I'm like Adams Peters and this organization I trust. It may not make sense right now, but, hey, maybe he takes that 50 million that's left and goes to the second wave of free agency, because today and the next couple of days we're going to hear the big names, we're going to hear the overpayments, right? But maybe he said, I know I'm going to make some deals that make more sense to that second layer, maybe some more Dante Fowler guys. He's not even signed yet, right? So maybe he's got to get humbled in all of this too. The Kinlaw one. We will see what that does, right? I don't know if I really have a judgment on it, but I think it was more so, did we really hurt the money, being as though we were going to be paying John Allen 15, 16 million this year?
No, John was going to. Here's the thing about John Allen. John Allen was going to cost the Commanders over 20 because he already is costing them some in dead money, which I might be able to. Yeah, he's got $6 million in dead money plus the 16 they saved, so he was going to be $22 million. And so you're basically taking the money you saved on Allen minus $1 million and giving it to Kinlaw. So you're still paying Allen the 20, the 6. But Kinlaw plus Allen's dead money is 21. But I think the flexibility, and the thing is, Kinlaw is currently 27. He'll turn 28 during the season. And he hasn't played a ton of snaps. Now, part of that is because he was hurt. But even then, he was more of a rotational piece in San Francisco at times. So the wear and tear on him, I think he's going to be able to come in and give you 700, 750 snaps, which is what he gave the Jets last year. And he was still playing really well, arguably his best ball at the end of the year. So you're getting younger. And I think the other thing, too, is attitudinally, very clearly, I think they were done with John. And Javon Kinlaw is a guy that, after he was done in San Francisco, Robert Saleh brought him to New York, and now Adam Peters, that he's done in New York with Saleh, is hey, I want you in D.C. with me. So I definitely think he seems like a good locker room guy, and watching his tape, does he get moved? Yeah. Does he play hard as hell? Also, yeah. So there's going to be some pluses and minuses there for him as a rotational piece.
And do you open up more reps for Newton with a Kinlaw as opposed to him trying to figure out reps with John Allen and the attitude piece? You know what I mean? So
100%.
It may make more sense for the whole, for the whole of the team as opposed to keeping an Allen.
That is 100% correct. Yeah.
So in that regard, I like it.
All right, Terrell, appreciate your call as always, man. Really smart. And I think that last part is really important. When they want to establish, another team that actually I think is doing a great job of this today, I don't know if the New England Patriots are going to be any good next year. I do know playing them is going to kind of suck because they have gotten a bunch of dudes who just play really hard, really physical football. And in year one of Mike Vrabel, he has said basically, with the way that they've treated this, exactly what Dan Quinn said last year, which is, if nothing else happens, we are going to establish our play style. We're going to play hard. We're going to play physical. And Javon Kinlaw, he plays hard. He plays physical. He's 6'5", and sometimes that's a really bad thing for a guy who's trying to get leverage. Low man wins, and you're 6'5". You ain't the low man all the time. He gets moved more than I'd like. The idea of Javon Kinlaw has always been a bit better than the football player, Javon Kinlaw. But his influence in that room will be positive. And that's worth something. And if he's your third guy, you can do a lot worse than Javon Kinlaw. And the price isn't, is it a little expensive? Yes. Is it crazy? No. Definitely not. Let's keep the calls going at 301-230-0980. Let's go to Dominic. Dominic, thanks for holding. Appreciate it, dude. What you got on what the Commanders have done today?
Yeah, Greg, thanks for the call. Yeah, I mean, at first I had to, really let it sink in for a minute, and and then it finally hit me. I'm like, hey, this is our best left tackle since Trent Williams. So, and they came out with a report before free agency started that they wanted to beef up the O-line, and they did what they said they were going to do. So my question is to the offensive line part is, do you think they're done on the offensive line? I'm assuming now this obviously means that Coleman's going to kick into guard with Cosme, out for probably until, I'm going to say, October. And Wiley is just Wiley. Do you see a situation where they go right tackle, or do they sign another guard, like maybe a Sheriff as a return, and to that, aside from that, at wide receiver, because I still think they're not done at wide receiver. I still think they definitely need a number 2. Do they go out and get somebody, or do they, re-sign Zacchaeus, which is probably what I think they're going to do?
All right, hold on. I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to keep you on the phone here so I do not forget all of the questions you asked, because they were all good ones. My brain is fried. I did 2 hours live at noon today on the internet, and now I'm going on hour number 3 here on the radio, so brain space is getting cramped. Wide receiver. I don't think that Zacchaeus, could OZ come back, and would that be a good signing? Yes. Is he coming back as your number 2? No. Because he and Debo are very similar stylistically. Zacchaeus is more of a traditional slot in terms of some of the quick area stuff. But they're both essentially zone players who are dangerous with the ball in their hands. Zacchaeus, that punt returner type, obviously did return punts for them last year. But I could see him or Crowder coming back potentially to kind of beef up in that receiving room. I think Noah Brown coming back as their 2 is probably the most likely re-sign where he would be an actual 2, because he's got that bigger body type, the vertical route tree, and some speed. I still think they probably go elsewhere. I still think that, again, I'll bring it up for the 800th time. I think Darius Slayton is a perfect fit here. I think the vertical speed and the production he's had, there's kind of a joke amongst NFL, insider types that have been breaking this stuff down that, every single year the Giants tried to replace Darius Slayton as their number 1 wide receiver until they finally, really replaced him with Malik Neighbors. And every single year, all he did was lead them in receiving. And so the guy's clearly a good football player. And so if they can get him, I like that at receiver. All right, what was the next position that you wanted me to pontificate on?
Yeah, so just going back to the offensive line part.
Yes.
Do you see a situation, where they cut Wiley and they bring in another, because they were interested in Morgan Moses. So clearly they're looking at the right side of the line. Or do they bring a Brandon Sheriff back to play right guard? Do they go draft with the Connolly out of Oregon?
Out of Oregon. Yeah, I don't think you can go into this thinking we are definitely going offensive tackle at 29, because that gets you into trouble. What happens if Connolly goes at 28? You're screwed. Or do you take the next best guy who you actually shouldn't take until 54? That, you can't go into the draft that way. You have to treat free agency like the draft doesn't exist when you're picking this late in the first round. So my guess is they keep Wiley. Wiley was fine last year. He's not great. You will always be able to do better than Andrew Wiley. I don't know how much better you're going to do for Andrew Wiley than at $10 million, which is the amount that you'd save, unless you think that you can get someone inside who's less expensive and kick Coleman out to right tackle. But here's the thing. Coleman's never played right tackle. He played left tackle and left guard and some right guard at TCU. He never played right tackle. I double-checked that in the last break. So the idea that he could play right tackle, not far-fetched. But I think you probably just kick him inside and Wiley stays at right tackle, and then you figure out right tackle next year, or you draft a guy this year that's your swing tackle for now and your right tackle for later. So that's that. I think on the edge and at corner, I think you probably need to sign someone, and maybe they go back to Fowler in the bargain bin once he's done tweeting, or they do whatever else they need to do kind of in that bargain bin, take a chance on a guy with some pass rush upside. And then you probably also draft one. That's the position that I would be hoping someone falls to me at 29. And then at corner, I do think that there are some guys in this draft that 29 you're going to feel pretty good, or at 35 or 40 if you trade back, that you're going to feel pretty good about there being one of the guys that you like available. That's kind of the sweet spot range where there's a bunch, like the after the first couple of guys go off the board, like Hunter and there's a couple other guys that are like bona fide top half of the first round guys. The next group should be starting to come off the board there. And so could you wait? Yes, but they probably do something to solidify that spot as a floor ahead of time. That's kind of my
Sure.
2 cents on it.
Sure.
And we'll see what
and
it is.
then my last question is, Craig, if I have the time here, is do you see a situation where DeMarcus Lawrence jumps from the Cowboys over to us if we can't get Fowler re-signed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think DQ would take him. I think he still has a little bit left. He's not nearly the player that he used to be, but like DQ likes his guys and the guys that he's had success with. And
Right.
I think Tank is a rotation player at this point, but like you can do a lot worse than Tank Lawrence as a rotation player. So Dominic, good questions. Good call. Appreciate it. We got time for a couple more calls at 301-230-0980. Let's start off with Kenny in Charlotte. Kenny, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, dude? How you doing?
Doing well, doing well.
Hey, look, man. So I love the offensive move. The defensive linemen, okay. It seems like they're kind of aiming for the draft, but what I wanted to know from you is, with them seemingly, from the naked eye, not really valuing the draft this particular year, does it speak to the fact that there's still several or a handful of players from last year that they're going to get on the field, and that's what they're counting on based on wanting to develop players also? That was just the main question that I had for you.
I mean, I think in a way you have to, Kenny. Like they have to rely on some of the guys that they did not get production from last year having production. It is just a reality of, like, if you want to be good, that's how the league works. Like, if you are the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They had guys like L'Jarius Sneed who were late. I think, wasn't Sneed, Anthony, a 7th? I'm pretty sure he was. Like, I'm pretty sure he was a later round pick that like turned.
Sneed was that late?
I don't know if he was a 7th. Maybe he was something else. But they've had like multiple 7th round picks that always seem to turn into starting corners for them. Like, that's how they were good. And then, by the way, they also were a team that tried to address left tackle 2 years in a row in the draft in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, and they missed both times. And then they had a left tackle problem, and it probably cost them a Super Bowl. So, like, you have to get production. I mean, think of the great Niners teams that Adam helped to build. They never won a Super Bowl, but they get guys like Fred Warner. They get guys like Hufanga down the list of rounds in the draft that contribute for them. And it doesn't have to necessarily contribute right away, but there's no doubt that, yes, if you get Jayden Daniels and Mikey Sanders still to be the core of your team for the future, that's a successful draft in 2024. But if they want to continue to be good over the next 3 to 4 years, yes, Laremy Tunsil is going to help. Yes, some of these other guys that they're bringing in and will bring in / are bringing back will help. But they're going to have some of these guys develop, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later. And you even saw last year, right? They were able to overcome the fact that they took a risk on Emmanuel Forbes. They decided they were going to put their resources somewhere else, not address corner, hope Forbes worked. He didn't, and they had to try to make it work, and they never really got there, which is why they did the Marshawn Lattimore thing. So definitely a great question, and the answer is yes. They will absolutely need some of those guys to come through.
Real quick, do you think they are also maybe, being a general manager, you're not just looking at this 1 year, but you're also projecting for the next draft as well. So it's just going to be interesting to see how Adam Peters moves. But from last year to this year, it seems like he's going to be the same guy. His free agency is not going to wow anybody, but hope to get production from who he brings in. Like he did last year. So appreciate it, Craig.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate your call, Kenny, as always. Let's go to DH. Our guy DH is on the mic. What's up, dude? How are you?
Craig, what's up? How you doing, man? It's been a long time, man.
Indeed.
Hey, man, listen, Sneed was a 4th round pick, by the way. I looked it up.
Thank you. Someone's got to.
Yeah, hey, no problem, bro. But, man, listen, I love what Adam Peters is doing, man. Like, he identified what we need, right? We need help on the edges, right? So we need help. Well, he's going to attack the defensive end position. But we need help at tackle on offensive line, and then we need another dynamic playmaker with Debo, man. And, like, I don't think he's making any sexy free agent splashes or anything like that. He's just doing what he needs to do. And he's proven that he knows way more than us. So I just tell people, like, sit back, let him do his thing because he knows what he's doing. And I think they identified that Super Bowl window is open right now, and you got to attack. So some of these trades where people seeing the draft capital go away, but you getting a perennial Pro Bowler who's going to be your bookend for the next 10 years and can play good football, doesn't give up that many sacks. So you're going to need a guy like Tunsil on your squad. Debo, who's going to be hungry this year to get a new contract and to show teams around the league that he can be the go-to guy. You get Kinlaw on the inside who will help with Johnny Newton. You know, you look at some of these signings right now. I don't think they're done, but I think they might really get active on day 2 and day 3 in those upcoming days to fill the back end of the roster. And then just attack the draft like they did last year, man. Finding guys that can play at every position and just using what they have to build what they got. And right now, that Super Bowl window is wide open, so they got to be aggressive and getting good players in here, man.
For sure. And I think, DH, on top of that, like all of the Super Bowl window being wide open stuff, look at the NFC. Like, the Eagles are awesome, obviously. The Lions are trying to figure out. They got new coordinators. We'll see. Like, it's a fun time. It's a fun time to mess around and see what we got in the NFC and how many more teams are really ahead of Washington. Minnesota, they've got their rookie or now second-year guy, and J.J. McCarthy is going to be taking the reins. I don't think Seattle scares anybody with Sam Darnold. Like, the NFC West is going to be interesting for sure, but it definitely is wide open. All right. Last but not least, let's go to Miles real quick. Miles, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, Craig? Thank you for taking my call.
You got it.
I just wanted to say I've loved the free agency so far, especially the Laremy Tunsil signing, how we didn't just give him a boatload of 2025 picks and spread it out through 2 years. I really did appreciate that. And I've loved the free agency so far. I think the only thing that has me scratching my head a bit is the John Bates signing. Like I understand he's a good blocking tight end. It's just when you think of all the good teams, like they're not paying a backup tight end for 3 years after they just drafted a tight end in Senate. Like I feel like
they're totally different players.
It's telling of. But so I feel like that's telling of Senate though. Like, is he really just not ready to play at all? Like, he's supposed to be a blocker, but
he's not.
We're
he's a very
blocker.
different kind of blocker than Bates is. Bates is a bona fide Y tight end. I don't want to call him a sixth offensive lineman, but much closer to that. Where Senate is a guy that if you get him on the move, like fullback style, he can be a blocker. But he's much more of like a vertical downfield passing threat, really. And yes, like there's clearly were issues with Ben Sinnott last year. You don't have a second round pick whose role diminishes throughout the year if he's doing well. That guy's role gets bigger. But I think Sinnott, Ertz, and Bates are all very different. Zach is good in the short areas. He's trying to get open on third downs, like underneath type stuff. I think Sinnott is like a seam running field stretcher, and then hopefully a guy who can, you give him a running start as a fullback, or you put him in motion and have him lead as a blocker for Jayden out in front on an arc option, and like he'll blow somebody's face mask off. But if you think that he is like a backup tight end who is going to sit there and block a defensive end, you got the wrong guy. That's kind of where we're at with that. All right, we got to run because speaking of tight ends, Logan Paulson joins us next here on The Hoffman Show.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.